I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. They are plans for peace, not disaster, to give you a future fulfilled with hope.
I said, hey, I'm just trying to get a barbecue started. I'm just trying to get a barbecue. I said, get a barbecue going in the apartment. I said, I was thinking about the Bible. I said, I'm just thinking about Jesus Christ though. I said, you gotta just got to the cooking. I said, you gotta start the fire on the grill. I said, you gotta really start the fire, not a drill. I said, just think about God. He not trying to do nothing bad, not trying to do a drill. I said, he just doing things you gotta do. I said, he's really not even trying to kill. I said, God just going against the bad, going against the evil, against the devil. I said, I don't really know, hit it with the shovel. I said, you gotta put the dead in the grave though. I said, you gotta put the devil in the grave though. I said, you gotta come with that armor. I said, in the barbecue. I said, that's the only way they feeling you. Or maybe, and they feeling me. I said, I'm just thinking about that they feeling me. Or that they feeling God. Or that they feeling G-N to the O-D. I said, it's G-O-D to the D, no. I said, that's the only thing I'm thinking about the water. I said, it's living water, tap in, tap out. I said, I don't really know what that maps out. I said, and it crap out. I said, you hit the 11 and you crapped out. I said, it went with a God, ain't no crap out. I said, don't give up on God though. I said, hit the 7 you in the game. I said, and that's how I'm playing God's name. I said, God's name in the game all day. I said, don't give up on God though. I said, that's the only thing that you should think about. I said, can't think, can't drink, can't sing. I said, I don't sing in the water. I said, Jesus, like I'm walking the water. I said, that was in Matthew. If you need to turn the book, look at the page. I said, look at the scripture, turn the page though. I said, jumping off the page, jumping off the book. I said, I don't really know, that's all it took. I said, barbecue, only thing. I said, barbecue, diamond ring. I said, that's the only thing on my mind, no. I said, waist meat, toe shirt. I said, t-shirt, new name, new thing. I said, barbecue, and that's a new link. I said, barbecue, and that's a new